All right, so I want to go over this article here from, looks like, history.com. Mysterious UFOs seen by World War II airmen still unexplained, it says. Um, so this can be like part of my Foo Fighters UFO videos. I only made one so far, but I want to make multiple videos on that because I'm very fascinated by that phenomenon. But let's go over this and see what all we can find out here. They were cigar shaped, glowed red, and could turn on a dime, which ruled out even the most sophisticated rockets of the time. So it was nearly the end of World War II, um, but for the airmen of the 415th Night Fighter Squadron, it felt more like the beginning of War of the Worlds. Lieutenant Fred Ringwald was the first to see it. It was writing. He was writing as observer in a night fighter piloted by Lieutenant Ed Schluter with Donald J. Myers on radar. It was a late November evening in 1944. Partly cloudy with a quarter moon, they were roaming the Rhine Valley just north of Strasbourg on the French-German border when Ringwald said, "I wonder what those lights are over there in the hills," according to an American Legion magazine story on the sightings from 1945. There were 8 to 10 of them in a row, glowing fiery orange. Then Schluter saw them off his right wing. They checked with Allied ground radar, but they registered nothing. Thinking that the lights might be some kind of German air weapon, Schluter turned the plane to fight, only to have the lights vanish. At first, the men said nothing, fearing they'd be ostracized, but then the sighting spread through the unit. So more crews, more sightings here. On December 17th of 1944, near Breisach, Germany, a pilot was flying at approximately 800 feet when he saw 5 or 6 flashing and red and green lights in a T-shape formation. The lights seemed to follow him, closing in to about 8 o'clock and 1,000 feet, before disappearing as inexplicably as they came. Then on December 22nd, 2 more flight crews sighted lights. One crew near Hagenau reported 2 lights in a large orange glow seeming to rise from the earth to 10,000 feet, tailing the fighter for approximately 2 minutes. Wow, what in the world is this? Or was this? After that, the lights peel off and turn away. See, they seem to all have some intelligence to them for sure. That's the thing. That's the thing about this. Fly along level for a few minutes and then go out. They appear to be under perfect control at all times. Right. According to Keith Chester's Strange Company, Military Encounters with UFOs in World War II. And then there was Lieutenant Samuel Krasny's experience, a wingless cigar-shaped object, glowing red, just a few yards off the plane's wingtip. Lieutenant Krasny, justifiably spooked, instructed the pilot to attempt evasive maneuvers. But the glowing object stayed right next to the jet for several minutes before it flew off and disappeared. Oh my gosh. How scary would that be for these pilots? Eventually, the airmen named the lights Foo Fighters, inspired by the comic strip Smokey Stover, in which Smokey, a firefighter, would often declare, "Where there's foo, there's fire." Okay. Um, I don't know, man. This is crazy. And there's more to this here. But an Associated Press reporter broke news of the Foo Fighters sightings on January 1st of 1945. And see, this was, a couple of years. I mean, this was, of course, not in America. This is a couple of years before the, all the UFO fiasco in the States that started in 1947. So this was, prior to that. So, and theories about their origins quickly abounded. The sightings were flares or weather balloons or St. Elmo's fire, a phenomenon where a light appears on the tips of objects in stormy weather. Those were some of the theories. That's weird. A light that appears on the tips of objects in stormy weather. Huh. But the members of the 415th rejected all those theories. Flares and weather balloons um, can't track planes, right? Like these objects could, and they'd seen St. Elmo's fire and could distinguish the two. Okay, so they had to have been something other than those three things. Okay. So, um then there were those who claimed that the airmen were suffering from combat fatigue, a polite way of saying that war stress was driving them insane, but there was scant evidence to suggest collective psychosis. The 415th had an otherwise excellent record, and when a reporter for American Legion magazine went to report on the squadron, he described them as very normal airmen whose primary interest was combat. And after that came pinup girls, poker, donuts, and the derivatives of the grape. Okay? Maybe meaning wine. um, Lieutenant Krasny's son, Keith Krasny, says his late father didn't fit the stereotypical profile of a UFO theorizer. In fact, he never even suggested that the glowing wingless cigar-like object that flew next to his plane was extraterrestrial in origin. He was very level-headed and very analytical, says Krasny of his father, adding that he kept a notebook where he wrote about and drew his Foo Fighter sighting. Oh, wow. But altogether, he never seemed prone to conspiracy theories. Krasny says his father was open to one. He entertained the idea that it could be late-breaking German technology. He did express the view that there were a lot of things during the war that were kept quiet. Was it the work of Nazi astrophysicists? Holding Nazi Germany responsible for the flying glowing orbs isn't too far-fetched. For one thing, the sightings took place over Nazi-occupied Europe at a time when Germany's Luftwaffe was making tremendous strides. Then there's the fact that the sightings stopped once the German army was defeated. But the most compelling link to the Foo Fighters might be Werner von Braun, a 32-year-old wunderkind rocket engineer. Von Braun helped the Nazis develop V-2 rocket, a long-range guided ballistic missile that Hitler was using in 1944 against Belgium and other parts of Allied Europe. It is not hard to imagine pilots unfamiliar with long-range ballistics comparing these rockets to a cigar-like wingless plane. The V-2 could even explain the glow, since its tail emitted a long burning plume. Nicholas Veronico, an author who has written several books on military aviation history, says though that explanation comes up short. The V-2 rocket doesn't have the maneuverability, he says. It could not turn on a dime and change its acceleration pattern. Once it started burning, it burned and produced thrust at one rating. Okay. Nothing in Nazi Germany's military aviation arsenal can explain the Foo Fighter description. Veronico says, one airman's observation from the time that the Foo Fighters follow the fighters so closely as to seem almost magnetized by them is particularly confounding. Given that there just wasn't the propulsion or metallurgical technology that could enable something like that. Right. And yet von Braun's career after World War II is worth considering. Following the collapse of the Third Reich, the engineer was recruited to be part of Operation Paperclip, a clandestine U.S. military program that spared 1,600 Nazi scientists prosecution for war crimes, moving them instead into the American military, where their past was whitewashed to the public. Wow, yeah. By 1952, von Braun had reinvented himself as a spaceflight advocate, writing a piece that year in Collier's magazine declaring that within the next 10 to 15 years, the Earth will have a new companion in the skies, a man-made satellite that could be either the greatest force for peace ever devised or one of the most terrible weapons of war, depending on who makes and controls it. His prediction proved overly conservative. The Soviets launched Sputnik 1 only 5 years later. Von Braun helped the U.S. Army launch Explorer 1 shortly thereafter. By 1960, he was with NASA, where he became the chief architect on Saturn V, the rocket that sent Neil Armstrong and the Apollo 11 crew to the moon. As von Braun recast himself as an American patriot, his career in the Nazi Party shadowed him, an ambiguous secret that reporters would playfully poke at. At one press conference before one Apollo launch, a reporter asked von Braun to assure the press that the rocket wouldn't hit London. But they could never prove his involvement, and it was only in 1985, several years after von Braun's death, that CNN broke news of the full extent of the aerospace engineer's Nazi past, more than 40 years after the fact. Veronico hopes that the Foo Fighter narrative will follow a similar trajectory. The fantasy is that 100 years after the war, the US or Soviets will release information about what they captured, and it'll blow our minds. But I think they would have capitalized on it by this point, the historian says, or weaponized it. So, pretty good article on the Foo Fighter phenomenon from I mean, it's just crazy, some of this stuff. So I also didn't know about the cigar shaped light thing. That is really interesting there. Like, what could these have been, you know? Like, but I thought I would share that um, with my ongoing research on the Foo Fighters, on on the Foo Fighters phenomenon. Hope you enjoyed the video. Definitely leave like any further comments and thoughts down below, and I'm sure I'll be coming out with more Foo Fighters videos um, in the near future. Um, and as I said, I only got one other video on it, but I plan to do a lot more. And yeah, I'll be back with more UFO and related content here shortly.